Hi, pastoring in the digital parish friends. I have some good news, followed by a little bit of bad news, followed by more, I hope, good news. Firstly, we've had some technical issues with our RSS feed for this podcast. So several of our most recent episodes went away for a while. They are now back and in full circulation. So we are glad for that. There's good news. That disruption, however, also delayed an announcement that I've been needing to make, and that is that we are sunsetting the Pastoring in the Digital Parish podcast. And by we, I mean myself and our team at Resource UMC. We are all part of United Methodist Communications. There's been a lot going on around the United Methodist Church, as you are likely aware, and these changes have presented our communications agency with the challenge to focus on doing fewer things, but to do them a little bit better. Now, United Methodist Communications has produced another podcast for many years. That podcast is called MyCom. You may have heard of it because we've done crossover episodes with former host and producer Dan Wunderlich on this podcast. And in fact, there was a lot of crossover and redundancy in our podcast. So when Dan announced that he was going to step down from MyCom, it felt oh so right to combine Pastoring in the Digital Parish with MyCom. So moving forward, that's what we're doing. I'm taking over hosting and doing some of the producer duties with MyCom. And the heart of Pastoring in the Digital Parish is going to stay alive as we now use MyCom to continue to build your digital ministry toolkit and bring your congregation into the digital age. So what you need to do is go to resourceumc.org/MyCom and get all your subscriptions done. Or you can search MyCom Church Marketing on your podcast player. That should turn it up as well. In the meantime, I have one second to last episode of Pastoring in the Digital Parish for you. It's a crossover, actually. So you're going to hear me talk about MyCom in the midst of this episode, but it's with two old friends of Pastoring in the Digital Parish, Shane Russo and Nathan Webb. And we're talking about how we can subvert the YouTube algorithm to share more than just outrage and maybe get some grace from our churches into that space as well. And I want to finally offer this. Doing this podcast has really been one of the most valuable experiences of my ministry career. I've made friends, and you're going to hear in this episode that Shane, Nate, and I are pretty familiar with each other. And that's because conversations that started with this podcast have spread into full-blown relationships. And that has happened in several cases here with Pastoring in the Digital Parish. I think it's going to happen with MyCom too. And I also so appreciate the support of the behind the scenes people who helped give this idea life. That's Philip Brooks, Tyra Sturgis, Patty Delabovi, Sarah Shork, Cindy Caldwell, Brenda Smotherman, Bridget Sloan, Lane Denson, Reed Gaines, Greg Petrie. There's been a whole lot of people with hands in making this whole project happen. But right now we're here to talk YouTube. So let's get into a really valuable episode on the Pastoring in the Digital Parish / MyCom podcasts. We are talking YouTube on the MyCom podcast, whereas YouTube is often referred to as the second most popular or most utilized search engine behind Google, which Google owns YouTube. So I'm not sure how that works. It's like Google just controls it all. But you search United Methodist Church on YouTube, and the results are not necessarily happy results. At least if you're not looking for like outrage videos about the United Methodist Church or something like that. So we are being joined by two United Methodist pastors who have invested quite a bit in YouTube and have seen growth on their YouTube channels that has translated into some growth in their church expressions as well. Shane Russo and nerd pastor Nathan Webb are here, and they're going to help us imbibe in some or figure out some useful YouTube strategies where we can begin to subvert the algorithm a little bit for the good in sharing some, some goodness across the land. So let's get into it. Shane, let's start with you. Can you first start by telling us like what your ministry context looks like? What are you doing?
Yeah, so my ministry context is twofold. I'm a 2-point charge pastor at a physical location and a digital church plant, East Ohio Conference. This past July, so not 2024, but 2023, our bishop appointed me to plant our first digital church plant. Really, Nate, we're like one of a handful in our Methodist system, right? If that.
As I know.
Yeah. And so and so I'm juggling both worlds of like an old, over 150-year-old physical church with a dwindling aging population, and then doing completely online ministry with Go Be Church. And our digital ministry hub, sort of the discipleship making, community making hub, is on Facebook, which I'd rather it wasn't. I wish it were on Discord, but Facebook is where the people I reach just tend to be. They have an aversion for Discord, which is why I like the ability to like hop over into Checkpoint and to get my fix there. But so most of it is on Facebook in terms of that, but probably my largest, I'd say, audience potential comes from YouTube, and that is where we've had probably the most consistent strategy and growth over the last year. Actually not even the last year, over the last 6 months, because this really all started popping off in January-ish. So that's kind of the quick and dirty of it all.
Cool. Well, Shane name dropped Checkpoint Church. So Nate, tell us about Checkpoint.
Yes. So Checkpoint Church is a church plant starting into our 5th year. We started back in 2020, right in the midst of the pandemic, with a church for nerds, geeks, and gamers. We didn't realize at the time that we were going to be digital, but pretty quickly we realized, yeah, we're kind of going to be digital. And it made a lot of sense anyway, considering the folks that we wanted to reach. Initially, we were like, maybe we should copy Comic-Con. Maybe we should try and do a board game cafe model. And then that year kind of foisted us online. And so we started to say, well, if the nerds, geeks, and gamers aren't at Comic-Con, where are they? And the answer we found was a platform called Twitch. And so we started reaching people on Twitch, and then they wanted more than what we were doing on Twitch. And so they said, we need more time with you. And so we started to invest into Discord, as Shane mentioned a moment ago, as our church building. And then eventually they said, okay, this is great, but we want more of the spiritual stuff. We want to talk about stuff. We want to dive into the discipleship of it all. And so we started to invest in YouTube at that point. I am very familiar with YouTube, grew up on it, digital native, had my own channels, before that I've tried to make work. And so it just made sense for us to get on there with a platform I was super familiar with and felt comfortable running. We started to implement nerdy sermons over in that avenue and started to explore it. And along the way, we built out a discipleship pathway where we intended it to be a funnel of people. The most people were going to be finding us on Twitch. Then they were going to check out our church building on Discord. Then they were going to dive deeper into spirituality with us on YouTube. Beginning of this year, everything changed and everything kind of flip-flopped because we went viral on YouTube and we swelled there. And so our funnel has kind of gone topsy-turvy, and it's become quickly our biggest avenue for reaching people for the first time. And I've sort of shifted our names a little bit to consumer, contributor, and co-creator spaces. And I consider YouTube now to be almost a contributor space because we have such an active comment community now, where it was maybe where we were just kind of putting out advertisements, but now it's where people are engaging with us before joining our church building. So it's a bit of an interesting twist in the model, but it's been an exciting one nonetheless.
So Nathan, let's just keep talking about what you're doing with YouTube then. So it sounds like you've shifted strategy going into this year. How are you utilizing YouTube now?
Sure. So we've used it a lot of different ways. We used it as our newsletter at one point. We were trying to get content out to folks on a weekly basis of like, here's where we're at, here's what's going on this week. That didn't work particularly well, but we did try it. We've tried podcasts there. We still have a podcast that we're releasing every week over there, and that's going fairly well. But where we've really found our niche is in these things called nerdy sermons, which for people that are more familiar with YouTube, they're really video essays. They're really short video essays. So typically around 10 to 15 minutes, happy, well edited, quick to the punch. We have a great editor that Shane and I both share who does an exceptional job. And we put out that kind of content to be really well and easily consumed. It's asynchronous. It's something that can then be engaged in other spaces, but that's the meat of what we're doing on YouTube. Since we had a video go viral, like I said, everything kind of changed in our focus. And so now we're also trying to be a little bit more consistent with releasing shorts, which is, of course, the short vertical TikTok-like content. Try to do that 5 days a week. So weekdays, I've started using more of the posts functionality as much as I can to try and engage with some of the community that YouTube wants me to use that feature for. But for the most part, it's been 2 pieces of content every single week, and then also the shorts content as close to daily as I can possibly get. And that's been the routine that we've rocked for quite a while since kind of hitting our stride early in 2024.
When you say a video goes viral, is that like 10 times more views than the norm, or more so, less so?
Yeah, so there's a really good, I don't want to shout out another church marketing podcast, but Brady Shearer of the Pro Church Tools podcast does have a really good metric for this, and he calls it viral for me posts. And so if you have something that goes 10x from your usual, then yeah, he says that is a viral for me post, and it's something that should be celebrated, something that happens maybe 4 times a year, more often if you're lucky, but if you keep consistent, that's how that will go. What I mean whenever I'm talking about this viral video is not 10x. I mean 100x. I mean 1000x. I'm bafflingly viral. I think there's these elements of like true organic virality, and then there is like, you know, just phenomena. There's something that doesn't even make sense. And so we had a video in particular that was just so abrasive in a way because it was something that Christians didn't want to talk about or were ragging on, and we were viewing it in a positive light, and so it took off. And because of the negative press that it was already getting, the mixture of this hatred and love at the same time gave it a certain sense of virality that was just insatiable for the internet. And so, yeah, that's 2 answers. I think that 10x is something that should be noted and celebrated. But what I mean is like we couldn't even comprehend the growth that we hit.
Shane, going back to strategy, are you utilizing a similar YouTube strategy these days?
Somewhat, yeah. So a lot of that overlaps. We started our channel a year ago, and we started initially almost exclusively with short form content. And it was things that I was making that was specific for that. Like I was making shorts for that. So whether it was me talking a point, or I actually in the early days of it, when I was I got a ton of views, real early on in the first few months, using a strategy of just putting text on a moving background and like having it come out and be read. And it was always just like some kind of weird random fact about people, right? Psychological fact or emotional or whatever. And those actually got probably some of the most consistent engagement in terms of comments and stuff. I need to start doing those again. I think what happened was they stopped getting as much feed or as many views as they were, and I got disenchanted and I just moved on to something else. Shorts has been, and we're talking like multiple shorts. At one point I think I was putting up 4 a day. Now I'm putting up 2 a day on YouTube consistently. But funny enough, they're getting more consistent views across the board, but I'm spending less time on them, so I don't know that they're as good as they were before. But because of my general growth overall with my long form content and doing that stuff, they're getting consistently like more views. Like we just hit this after right at a year, we hit 400,000 views on our channel. Most of those, the vast majority of those, are our short form content. So yeah, that started. So our strategy is I put out a sermon every week, and it's more of a traditional sermon than, Nate's sermons are great. His nerdy sermons, he calls them video essays. That's fine. You can call them whatever you want. It's still a sermon in my book, right? But if you compared the two, mine is probably more like what you would see in a quote unquote traditional church.
You're not in the pulpit, but it's kind of
right.
like being
Yeah,
in the pulpit.
I've done a lot with my background. Yeah, but it's yeah. And I would say that so we put one of those out a week, and then every day, 7 days a week, two shorts that are based normally off of that long form content. or some long form content. I've chopped up hour-long interview videos that I've done before and created like 2 months worth of shorts out of that and stuff like that. And so I probably wouldn't be able to keep the consistency up with how frequently I do it with the demands on my time now if I didn't use some specialized tools for that. But also using those tools has cut down, again, sort of the micromanaging that I'm doing, which I know is different from what Nate does. But I've also not really noticed much of a fall off. But I'm constantly trying to experiment with exactly what kinds of shorts are out there. So some of them are informational, some of them are just fun. But one of the main focuses for our channel from the beginning, especially for the short form stuff initially, was to connect with people, like build the community, not be trying to teach them or preach to them or disciple them exactly, but it was more like, tell us about you. And that's been like my overarching digital ministry strategy anyway. And then when you get them to, like, once you get that investment both ways, then it becomes that time. And I know, and that's not too dissimilar to what's going on. Like, that's kind of the driving force behind a lot of it. But that YouTube was a very intentional space where we started off that way.
So when you're talking short form video, especially taking like segments of your sermon and putting those out as short form video, are you then using that short form video to invite people or even drive people towards the longer content? And I ask this because most of our listeners here are engaged in an organization that is producing the long form content on a weekly basis in the form of a sermon. So are you kind of taking that sermon and parsing it out into that short form content?
When I'm intentional about it, that is what I do. But I will also say I've seen almost no evidence that people are actually jumping over to my full video from my short stuff. Again, I'd like to, I'm sure there's studies and like metrics on this, but my just sort of anecdotal experience on our channel has been that people either come for short stuff or they come for long stuff. And the retention on my short form stuff is off the charts higher than my long form stuff anyway. So really people come to my channel for the short things. I use the long form content because I want it out there, but also because it drives the algorithm. Like having long form stuff that's getting views makes it so my short form stuff is more in people's feeds.
Okay.
So I'd like, in a perfect world, yes, it would feed them into that, and then that would feed them into the group and all of that. And that is like, that's the thing, but it's not working that way at the moment. So what I really need to be doing more consistently and more intentionally is focusing on the short form stuff as the channel that moves people where I want them to be.
So would you all say that there's still value in producing the 20-minute long video, even though it might get, I'll just throw around numbers here, but arbitrary numbers, but like 300 views, whereas a short form video that could be 3.5 minutes long might get 3,000 views. Is there still value in having that 10 to 20 minute video?
I think if you're getting 300 views on a sermon, you're doing fantastic.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, no doubt.
I think maybe if you're getting,
you came out of a mega
views,
church already.
That's probably more the experience that most people are finding by just kind of dropping their sermons on YouTube. It's hard to get growth and it's hard to find it. I think that there's an element of what do you want this platform to be and how do you want to use it? And so what I would encourage a lot of people that are creating that 20-minute sermon, if you want to post it, cool. If you don't want to post it, cool. But the question is, why do you want to post it to YouTube? Are you posting it there because you want to create a YouTube audience? If that's the case, then go for it. But odds are most people aren't trying to create a YouTube audience. They want to get searchable. And so you're going to want to try and post videos. You could even do chunks of videos instead of shorts and try and tag them around things that you want to be known for, answering questions. But if you're wanting to form a community around your shorts, odds are you're probably already doing a better job of that on Facebook and Instagram Reels. And so the real question is, why are you posting which content where? And like, what is the reason for your content on this space? And if you answer that question for yourself and you have an answer and you have a legitimate initiative behind it, then I'd say go for whatever feels right with your gut and with your vision that you've got laid out. But odds are, I would say there are a lot of churches that just don't even bother asking the question of like, what is our strategy for this short form content? Why are we posting it in that space? It's the same reason why I often tell churches not to get on TikTok. Say, if you want to get on TikTok, send your pastor to TikTok. Your church is not desired there. That's not what TikTok is for. Whereas if you're on YouTube, it's going to be a little bit more professional. And so if your pastor's on YouTube, that might work, but your church could also have a really viable audience there. It's just a matter of what do you want behind that space.
Well, Shane, the local church that you're working with, if they were starting to express a want to build out a YouTube presence, what would you use to kind of feed that want, or how would you justify that church moving on to YouTube?
Well, interestingly, my first foray in this, like when I'm in my 4th year at this church, and early on, I actually was growing their YouTube presence. I've stopped doing that because I just don't have the time to do it all. And we had gotten up to close to like 300 subscribers or something, which was all organic, all with no promotion, no anything like that. So, I mean, but for them, their average worship attendance is like 35. So we had an audience there of 10 times what they normally do. And it was all long form. I did hardly any short. Well, actually, no, that's not true. I did the sort of getting to know you stuff over there, and we got a lot of views that way too. So actually the strategy was very similar, but I was doing that to both sort of learn and to get it out there and see what was working, what wasn't, while also doing some other things. For them, that is not the strategy I would use for them to drive anything. I use something different with them that is strictly driven by Facebook and community groups there, things that already exist, that have had an actual tangible physical impact on our location there. The strategy is completely different. Honestly, if anybody even noticed that I had stopped posting to that channel a year ago, which nobody has, nobody's literally said anything to me about it. If they had, I would have told them, I don't think this is the best use of my time or our time. I think a better use of our time for this location, for this church, is to do this thing over here. Now, having said that, go back to what Nate said about why are you posting the things that you're posting? Are you trying to grow an audience? Are you trying to grow a community? What are you trying to do? And that will dictate why and how you post things there. I think a lot of churches use it for 2 reasons. One, they either go live there in lieu of Facebook, right? Which I see that a lot. And or they use it mostly as a repository for their stuff so that they can point people to some old sermon that they did. Which is not that's fine. There's value in using it as a collection site. You know what I mean? But I think I'm not sure how I would tell my physical church that we should use YouTube, other than how I started using it with it in the beginning, and that was as a by posting our sermons, but also posting a lot of the getting to know you short form. I would probably use a very similar strategy that I'm using with Gobi Church, honestly, but the results would be completely different because we don't have the other parts of the infrastructure set out to absorb that.
Well, I've combed across both of your existing YouTube presences, and what I kind of appreciate is that there are plenty of videos that have like triple digits in terms of views, accented by several videos that have 5 digits or more of views. And I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that you are posting plenty of videos with no expectation that it is going to get the 5 digits or more views, that you're going to continue doing these videos that drive the triple digits, knowing that that's all they're going to get and that there's value for that. But have you noticed any commonalities in the videos that have taken off, so to speak, in the videos that you've produced that have hit like the 5 or more digits in views?
Yeah, for us, it always has to do with controversy. And so that was kind of what I was getting at with the element of the one video that had Christians saying real bad things about it, and then we were kind of a breath of fresh air for fans of this show. That was birthed out of kind of the opposite of controversy, and the controversy existed before us, and then we stepped in and said, well, actually, and sort of were a beacon of light for people that wanted to hear a pastor's perspective and a positive view. And so that's our best performing video by far. But before that, our Viral for Me posts, our 10X posts, we're still along that same line of like, what's really popping off in pop culture, which is what our focus is on for our video essay nerdy sermons. And so that worked really well for us. What could shock somebody to say, I can't believe a pastor is talking about Cult of the Lamb, right? Like, I can't believe a pastor is talking about this anime or that movie. And so often I'll try and focus up a little bit on like what's making the Christosphere angry right now, because odds are if Christians are pearl clutching, there might be some good fruit in there that I can tap into, teach a valuable lesson, maybe change a few minds of the pearl clutchers, but definitely be a beacon of light for those that are tired of being told that they're bad because of shows that they watch and games that they play. And so that was a real like formative moment for us, was seeing that correlation and saying, well, let's see, how can we continue to tap into that as a means of these videos doing better, performing better, and reaching a wider audience. I'd say it's not tried and true. We had one that randomly went well for Pokemon Concierge. No clue why that one did so well as it did. It was certainly like, not to say that I was phoning it in, but you know, it's a 40-minute 5-episode show, like 5 minutes at a time. It was just a nice, pleasant, easy breezy show that I was like, this will be an easy nerdy sermon. And it wound up really tapping into people that cared about this show. So it's hard to guess even still. So I wouldn't say there's like an expectation behind any of them. But there is a like, I know what's probably going to work well and what's going to be kind of just another good nerdy sermon.
Shane, you generally don't have a problem saying things like they are. Do you court the controversy too? Do you poke the bear sometimes
first of all,
intentionally?
I resemble that remark. Second of all, I was actually sitting over here going like, Nate really does not want to name which video popped off for him. And I'm sitting here, he's like going out of his way not to name it. I love it. How many views does that one have, by the way, now? Is it like...
We're almost at 200K.
Yeah, okay.
That's about
okay,
I'm going to link it in the show notes, so it's no way around it.
It's funny too, because the person, the level 2 member that did like part of the scripture reading in that, they were they're like, oh my goodness, that member's gonna see me. But yeah, so yes, actually very similar to Nate. It's controversy, but where his is like what is irritating Christians in sort of the gaming nerdy realm, mine is what is irritating Christians in the political sphere, the social sphere, I mean his is social too, but I mean like social justice sphere. Our channel, my whole ministry, I shouldn't say my whole ministry, but a big hallmark of my ministry is debunking like very conservative theology and worldviews, and like giving a space for those who believe differently to know that it's okay to do that and you can be a Christian and do that. And so all of the shorts and stuff that have ever gone viral for me have been things that come like directly and sometimes abrasively countered something that was popular. I am 100% convinced that if I spent even just a little bit of time paying attention to what's going on currently right now and making shorts based on that, very direct in opposition of some of these things, I would get more views. I'd get more followers. My thing is the reason why I haven't done that is just because I haven't wanted to yet spend the energy investing in the responses, right? And I am of the mindset that do not put something on the internet that you don't want to engage with, right? I hate vague posting and doing that, dropping some kind of bomb and then just walking away and letting the pieces fly that is irresponsible, right? So if I'm going to put this stuff out there and hold to that and want to engage in that and actually really foster the community that I say I want to foster, what that means going back and forth with folks sometimes, I have to invest in it. And I just haven't wanted to invest that kind of emotional energy into it yet. That's not to say I won't, because I'm real close to just going, you know what, y'all, let's go. Let's just do it, right? and this happens almost, I feel this way almost after every June. After every Pride season I put out, and I get a bunch of yahoos talking about my head looking like an egg, because they can't come up with anything original. Although there was one real good one this year where they were like, good to see that all the king's horses and all the king's men put them back together. I actually laughed out loud at that one. I was like, kudos to you. That was a good way to put that. So yeah, but it's controversy, right? We tap into separate elements of it, but it's all, what are Christians saying that is isolating themselves off from the rest of humanity and the rest of Christianity? Like, I want to talk to the rest of them. Like, you can have your bubble, whatever, but just know that I'm going to be ministering to the folks outside of the bubble and letting them know that it is okay out here. It's fine. It's better than fine. It's good to be out here. So, but that is the commonality through every single one of them. Every single one has had some element of irritating a conservative.
I brought up some of those viewership numbers earlier to note that y'all are not just like going out there for the views. Like every video is not an outrage video or a controversy video, that there's something deeper to be said there.
Correct.
And that it's not just about courting the views.
Well, it should also be noted that like even channels that have grown like ours have, if I post a video that's completely disconnected from anything we've ever done before, I'm going to get a couple dozen views.
Yep,
at most. Like that's going to be the true base of our audience. That's going to say, out of these 35,000 people, I'm going to have 50 that are willing to click on a random new video that's not in our usual format, usual thumbnails, usual SEO. If none of it feels familiar, then YouTube's only going to serve this to a really small portion of my audience. If they only see it and they don't interact with it any more than they normally would, it's not going to get sent to the rest. And so I'm still kind of beholden to like what I want to do anyway and what needs to be done that we're doing consistently. But that's not to say that I'm not still very much in experimentation phase, and we're going to have things that are not going to work as well and that we're going to try for a little while. And then we're going to have our things that we know we need to keep doing because we've got the audience that trusts us at this point.
I also want to be clear though, as you pointed out, I don't generally put out videos that are argumentative against the point or the people that I disagree with, right? It is usually argumentative and disagreeing, but it's more so in a way that is targeted to the people who need to hear that it's okay not to believe this thing. So it's not like, and that's another reason why I haven't.
It's
really
not saying here's why you're wrong.
Yeah, it's
saying okay.
That's why I haven't embraced the controversial mentality. Totally, like to say, like Pastor Paul said this thing this week. Here's why that's wrong and what you should believe instead. I would go viral all the time if I did that. In fact, I'm going to put that in my pocket just in case things don't work out. But I mean, it's more like, hey, I've seen this idea floating around the internet. I don't think this is healthy, and here's what we can do instead, right? And so it's still controversial, and it's still going to pick at the same people who already are not happy about that idea. But I do it in an edifying, uplifting, building way rather than a targeted, I'm tearing down this person or this, you know what I mean? So it is controversial and it taps into all that, but it's not intentional. Why did my camera go all weird? It's not, you know what I mean? So it's not intentionally like trying to be.
I think it goes back to what we were saying about knowing your audience and knowing the intention of the space that you're on. And so I think I can speak for Shane, and I can definitely speak for myself here in saying that we're going into this thing as church planters. I do not consider myself a televangelist. I do not consider myself a prophetic voice. I'm not trying to do this thing that is to boost my own ego. But instead, I'm here to be a pastor amongst these people. And so that was an important differentiation that I made right from the get-go, is like, this is Checkpoint Church. This is not Nerd Pastor Nate. And so sometimes it may feel like an ego thing that I have a moniker online of Nerd Pastor Nate. But in fact, that was very intentional, to divide myself from the community we're creating and then the content creator, for lack of a better term. Sure, I am a content creator and I do create content for Checkpoint, but it's very important to me that I differentiate between those mindsets and between what's actually happening and between the people that I'm trying to reach. And so if I'm only going out there and poking the bear, then there are great TikTokers that do that exact thing, and they're great televangelists. They're great missionaries. They're great this. But I'm here to be a pastor to Checkpoint. And so the work of marketing that I'm doing is very intentional because I want to reach people that would want to be a part of Checkpoint. not that want to think that I'm a great prophet and think that, wow, how brave of you to speak out for this TV show. I don't care about that. I want people to say, Checkpoint has a pastor that is serving this congregation towards a community that welcomes people that like this TV show.
Still hasn't named the TV show.
Have been hotel, James. Have been hotel. So yeah, this whole argument there is like, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? And if you can answer that question, almost all of the rest falls into place.
This is the MyCom podcast. We're talking about building a YouTube strategy for your ministry with Shane Russo and Nathan Webb. As a people-pleasing Enneagram 9, when we start talking about not being afraid to go to the controversial subjects, I get a little bit scared about, my ability to grow a YouTube channel, particularly because I think about the amount of energy that I'm going to have to invest in moderating the comment section. Have any tips, tricks, ideas that you utilize in moderating your comment section?
Absolutely. The biggest one for me, and the biggest mind shift that I needed was somebody referred to negative and toxic YouTube comments one time as vandalism. And ever since I heard that, it's like, I can delete it. I don't have to read this. I shouldn't feel guilty that I'm censoring somebody's voice. No, this is my church building. This is my church space. And somebody has come in here and vandalized it. Somebody's thrown a rock through my stained glass. Somebody has spray painted the side of my church. And I don't have to tolerate that for free speech. And so that was an important differentiation for me, is like, there are comments that I'm going to engage with that are toxic. And then there are some that I'm going to delete and feel no guilt about banning people, deleting people from my space. That felt so strange at first, but that's something that the more I've gotten accustomed to it, the more that I've been capable of doing it. But that is the big mindset shift for me, is like, can you view toxicity? I'm not talking about all feedback, even constructive criticism. Can you view toxicity as vandalism and say, let's get out the soap and sponge and get rid of this?
Yeah, ours is very similar in that vein. It was really early on where I was differentiating between, like, I will sometimes let things that are personal sort of attacks on me specifically. Like I almost never delete those egghead comments, because they're usually, I'll actually come back with something like, "Oh, that was so original," or like, "Thank you for noticing." It's very, it's very,
you got to screenshot them and turn them into a quilt or something someday.
Right, it's going to be, we'll put them on socks or something. It'll be great. But so sometimes I'll let those go. It just depends. But usually, like the milder ones like that. If it's a comment that is a direct, like, if it's a comment that's an attack on whatever position I'm holding, those stay. Those almost always stay. And I will engage with those just like, but if it's a toxic, like, attack on the community, and here's the way I view it. So he views it as vandalism. That's a great way to view it. I view it like this. I would never be allowed to walk into somebody else's church building on a Sunday morning and start, just in the middle of it all, just start spouting off all the craziest nonsense, tell them how terrible they are, how invaluable as humans they are. Like, I would never be allowed to. Not only would they ask me to leave, I might get arrested, and if I'm in the South, I might get shot. So, okay, that was a generalization about the South, but you don't see that crap happening in the North, is all I'm saying. But truly, we can't do that. We would never allow that in a physical space. So how dare we allow that? And especially because these spaces in general are being intentionally crafted to be safe for the marginalized communities that I'm trying to reach, right? And so, and I say that, that's plastered everywhere. Like, you can say what you want to say, you can engage how you want to engage, but that doesn't mean that everything is going to be, there is no free speech on this channel. There's freedom to engage, but there's a clear line. And if you go over that line, then you can take that, and there are lots of other channels out here that will take what you're selling. But that's not here, because this is for the LGBTQ community. This is for people for racial justice. This is for, environmentalists. This is for progressive Christians. This is a place for us to feel safe, to explore these things further and deeper, and to be more like Christ. And if your goal here is to be counter to that, then the world was built for you. So, you can have fun over there, but I don't need to keep that on here. I don't want people coming onto my channel thinking they're going to be safe and then seeing something that immediately targets them personally. That's just never going to happen. And so I have less of a concern about doing it, and I always have. But that does come with people going, "Well, I thought you were inclusive." I'm like, "Yeah, we are inclusive, but that doesn't mean that you can just be any old kind of way here." Yeah. There's a difference between being accepting and inclusive and being a doormat for your bad theology and ideology. You know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah, that's helpful stuff. I'm going to ask you about tools in a little bit, particularly Shane. I'm interested in how you're scoring together 2 short videos a day. But in the meantime, has there ever been an idea that you've had that you were going to take to YouTube that you thought was just going to take off and it didn't?
Every podcast. I don't know why. I don't know why podcasts just don't work for my demographic that I'm wanting to reach. I love podcasts, and so I have that. But YouTube has the podcast feature, and I was like, cool, they're going to incentivize us. And if we use their new feature, they're going to be like, great, we'll boost you to the top. And just not really.
Taking off.
I always want it to be more engaging, and they never have been. So that's definitely the biggest one that just doesn't work. And then live too. Really, live and podcasts are the 2 things that haven't worked well. If I go live from my phone on YouTube, it works pretty well. If I go live from my computer on YouTube, I might as well be talking to the people in this room with me. Like it's pretty pointless. So I don't know what that is or why they don't work, but those are the things that have fallen pretty flat.
Yeah, live is definitely one of those for me too. I'm still trying to figure out how to make that work, but I've never gotten any traction there, even with the audience that I have. And part of it is because of what the lives that I have done. Like people, I wish it were different, but people are generally not that interested in doing a worship service that is not already connected to like an actual church. And even then. I just said actual church, a physical church. Good Lord, what is wrong with me? See, look,
there comes the edit. Yeah,
yeah, I got to remove that. Make sure that does not get in the edit. But yeah, so there's that. I think, and early on when I was experimenting with the getting to know you things, I also used that same kind of format for some racial justice pieces that did not. Part of it was that it was early. The other part that it was not that the quality wasn't that great, but also I just don't think that time that at that time it was something that was interesting to folks. I know I could do it differently now and do it better and do it around, probably June and February, and it would get a lot more traction. So part of it is just timing, right? I think I was trying to do it in August, and there were no controversies around that at that time, right? And so I think the things that have flopped have been timing based and also just I think the tool is better utilized. Live is a good feature, and I've seen people have success with it, but I think most of those channels have very specific types of content that they post that is conducive to a live audience. Most other YouTubers that are popping off are not doing lives as a general part of their strategy.
Well, let's talk about tools for success then. And Shayna, you piqued my interest with talking about doing 2 shorts a day. What kind of tools are you utilizing that helps you produce in that kind of volume?
Well, in the way I'm doing them now, I think Nate uses the same tool. We just use it slightly differently. He invests a little bit more time, I think, into curating them. I've noticed it in the quality of his shorts specifically because they all make much more sense sometimes than mine do. But Opus Clips is the tool that I use, and it's an AI sort of driven tool where you just put in your long video. Actually, you can just put your YouTube clip, like link there, and then tell it some parameters, have it, have a template that you've formulated or use one of theirs, and then tell it this is what I want in terms of length and all of that. And then, a few minutes later, it'll come back with, anywhere up to 20 or 30 clips. And then you can go through each one of those and edit those down further. Now, I generally don't do that often. I will look at them and make sure like they make some sort of sense, but I'm less interested in them at the moment telling having a beginning, a middle, and end, and that sort of thing. But I need to do better at that, because right now that is the place where most of the views, most of the engagement is happening. And so crafting those in such a way that every one of them has a call to action, that would be very beneficial. But that's how I do it and then I'm able to post those across all of my platforms that I use, but specifically YouTube, and schedule those out. And so that tool also has the ability to schedule out right natively, but that's not necessarily the best way, I think, but it gets me what I'm trying to do. So it's how I'm able to do it that quick. If I had to download every one of those and upload them individually, that would take much, much more time, and I just don't have that time to dedicate right now to doing that. But that's the tool I use, and I love it.
Are you pulling those clips from the 15-minute sermon that you're doing?
Yeah, I just what I do is after I upload my long form video, my sermon, I just take that YouTube link and put it right into the web browser for Opus Clips, and then and tell it what exactly, like all the parameters, and then it does the rest. Now, it doesn't always pick. Sometimes it doesn't pick the greatest, and it tells you like what it thinks the quality of these are and why and how maybe you can improve or whatever. Some of that's very good. Some of it's like and some of the videos it picks are just trash. For the most part, it's very important about the quality of the content you put in, right? If you're putting in trash videos, you're not going to have great clips, right? So part of that is making sure that my long form stuff is as good as it can be, so then the short form stuff makes sense.
All right, Nate, you're doing a lot of nodding.
One rule before it. What that has done for my long form stuff, though, is it's changed how I write it in ways that it's more pocketed, so that I actually find myself writing in clips sometimes to say like, oh, this would make a nice clip, you know? And so I don't do that on purpose, but I have noticed probably over the last few months it's getting more and more like that, and I'm not sure how I feel about that.
Yeah,
I'm not sure how.
All right, we're going to get to Nate, but then I have to ask you, are you consistently disappointed in that what you think is going to be the clip, Opus Clip, is not pulling out?
Nah,
I can see that happening.
It usually does. It usually will put it in there.
All right, good for you.
Yeah, my stuff does not pull out my favorite clips. I really, the nerdy sermons don't work for Opus. We've done several of them, but it tries to draw out the pop culture stuff because it recognizes keywords. And so it's going to see, he's talking about She-Hulk. She-Hulk's a show. I can find that on the internet. And so it's going to pull out those naturally. But the last thing I want is a 60-second clip of me explaining the plot of She-Hulk. Like, that's not my goal with our content that I want to create. And so I find myself often like butting heads with Opus. I do really like what Opus can do. By far, Opus Clip is way better at editing our podcast. And so we put out a like news show every single week. And so it's 6 segments of news, and then a game show, and then 3 more segments of news, and then some like upcoming things. And so it's already so super segmented that I can pop it into Opus. It clips them pretty much. And then I just take it and tweak it a little bit in the editor, and it makes phenomenal clips of all of the segments with really very little work on my end. So in that way, it's huge, but there's some content that I think performs better and some that doesn't. It really does a good job with sermons too. If I go and preach somewhere IRL, then it does those pretty well and does the tracking for them. I did see Descript recently started doing this as well, and they now have an AI that's built into it that looks for shorts and will try and find the best shorts out of whatever video you edit into Descript. Everybody's doing it in some way, shape, or form. And as my friend Jason Moore often likes to say, right, AI today is the worst you'll ever see it. And so this is always going to get better and always going to improve. And there's going to be another platform coming out there. So the more we can use the platforms to help alleviate some of the stressors of the time consumption of the ministry, the better. But I will say a tool that I just want to name real quick is just using YouTube. Like, go into the settings and actually use YouTube because they will reward you for using everything that they've got there. It doesn't matter if you don't have anything to put in a card. Come up with a card. You need to be using the cards. Doesn't matter if you want an end screen, use the end screens because they're going to incentivize people that use that. add in the transcript if you can. Use the description, use tags, fill up those 500 tags, like whatever you want to do. Find a way to use all of the elements of YouTube, and you will be amazed at how it will reward that kind of full use of their own suite that they have built into it. They have a new thing for thumbnails where you can test thumbnails, A, B, and C. And so I'm going to be testing thumbnails, partly because I want to know what performs best, but also because I know YouTube's going to say, hey, one of our creators is using our custom thumbnails thing. Let's push them a little bit further. And so the more that you can work with YouTube, the more that I feel like they will work with you. Using posts, using polls, taking the maximum capacity of a platform is always going to make the platform learn you and trust you a little bit more as a creator on that actual platform.
I have this ongoing theory behind social media strategy, and YouTube isn't part of social media platform, and that all these platforms or apps want users to stay on their apps. And so if we adopt that mindset of, well, how do we create content that's going to feed the monster of the algorithm that wants people to stay within this app, we're going to increase our presence there a bit more. So yeah, and that feeds right into that. If you're using their tools, they're seeing that you're investing in trying to get people to use their app a little bit more. Totally makes sense. Yeah. Well, we are about out of time, but any last tools that you want to offer for the budding YouTube maker, creator, contenter out there?
I don't remember which one Shane uses. I use one of the APIs that's built into it called TubeBuddy. And so that would be a good idea if you want to invest in one of them. And just kind of take advantage of the things that they offer. That's the one that I have. I have a TubeBuddy Pro account. That helps show me how my video is performing SEO-wise. So that's search engine optimization. And so there's only so much stuff that YouTube tells you. They do tell you quite a lot. I highly recommend understanding your analytics as well. But TubeBuddy is going to plug in there and show you some things that they don't, and show you some options that they might not do the math for. So highly recommend finding some kind of plug and play something to work with YouTube to better understand it.
Yeah, I use, in that vein, I use vidIQ is the one I use, and I have a pro account for that. And one of the things I love about that is being able to use their keyword inspector to try and find the keywords and the tags and things like that that are high ranking that will help things sort of grow and stuff. But they give you all the good analytics and stuff, and they have also an ability where they make it very seamless to optimize videos that you have up. Like you can just analyze a video, like how like you have it out there, whether the thumbnail, the description, like all that stuff, and it will analyze it and tell you these are things that you could improve that might improve the reach of your video. And so yeah, that's the one I use. But whether it's that, I used to have a TubeBuddy account, like something like that. They're gonna go a long way in helping make that happen.
Cool. And any last pieces of advice in general for our budding YouTube creator out there?
Yeah, I have one, and this is specific to church folks, to churches who want to get into this space. If you're going in trying to be a successful YouTuber, you will fail, because it takes a completely different mindset for what you're trying to accomplish. If you're trying to make disciples for Jesus Christ, for the transformation of the world, that's going to require you to behave differently and to engage differently with folks than say Mr. Beast. Although I would argue that he's done a lot of good in the world. But my point is, if you're trying to be a successful YouTuber, that is different than being a successful Christian.
That's good stuff. I don't have anything to add. I feel like that's
no notes. Nice.
It sums up well my theory that you just gotta know what you want from this platform. And know the why behind what you're here for, and then have a plan for what's next. And so I think that YouTube could be a viable community platform. For us, it's Discord. For Shane, it's Facebook. But knowing where you want people to go is also huge. And we could have a whole other podcast talking about just analytics and how to read those. So I feel like I've got plenty more, but if the juice is worth the squeeze of a couple minutes is the question, because there's plenty more to be said.
We're going to table that for a future episode of the MyCom podcast. But Shane and Nathan, thank you so much for joining us, for leading us through your experiences, and for making my first episode here in this new foray so comfortable and informative. Really appreciate you both, my friends. First MyCom episode is a wrap. Thank you for taking this journey into the wild, sometimes wonderful world of YouTube with me. I can recommend some other episodes if you'd like to dig further into this topic or a related topic. In fact, 2 of our most recent episodes on the MyCon podcast are quite relevant here. The episode about digital storytelling with Sabrina Joy Stevens is going to help us tell good stories online. And then the episode about enhancing sermon videos with my friend Catherine Price is going to help level up your YouTube presence. You can find these episodes along with other episodes and episode notes at resourceumc.org/mycom-podcast. Of course, Resource UMC is your one-stop destination for leaders throughout the United Methodist Church, so visit there often for ideas and inspiration for leading the church into the future. Again, my name is Ryan Dunn. Big thanks to United Methodist Communications for making this podcast possible. Specifically, thanks to Renee McNeil for production and content support, to the marketing team at MyCom for helping to get the word out, and thanks to Lane Denson for technical support. MyCom is a monthly podcast, generally premiering new episodes on the 3rd Tuesday of each month. So I'll be back with you in August. I'm really looking forward to it. In the meantime, peace to you.